Hello and welcome to the Central Podcast, everybody. The podcast where personality meets fragrance, passion, and power. I'll be your host for today, Chris, also known as Fragrance Overload. And with me is my main man, my brother from another mother, the one and only Bernie from Heavenly Central. Bernie, how we doing today, my man?
Man, we are doing great. And I am so excited to be here with you today, Chris. I know that we have a great show for everyone today.
Absolutely. And as you know, the Central Podcast, each week we go ahead and we peel back the layers of perfume culture as creators and also as collectors. Today, we have an amazing show where we are going to take a deep dive in understanding and knowing my man, Bernie, today. As you already know just a little bit about me, we're going to dive in and ask some of the questions some of you may be curious about my man, Bernie, and especially his journey as a fragrance lover and a content creator. Bernie, are you sure you're ready for these questions, man?
Brother, I am so ready. I am ready to jump into the Central with you.
Absolutely. So go ahead and get comfortable, breathe in, and let's step into the world of scents together. With me and my brother Bernie, let's get into it.
Yes.
So Bernie, to start it off, man, we just kind of really want to know, some of the people have been wondering and just are curious. Can you just tell us about how you get into the world of scents? What really started it off for you, man?
Well, what really started off for me was, we can rewind and go back when I was probably about 7 or 8 years old.
Okay.
I found a bottle of Givenchy Gentlemen on my dad's room.
Okay.
And I just remember opening it up and smelling it.
Mm.
And I was like, wow, this smells incredible. And this was just at a very young age. But then at that same age, I was in the 3rd grade.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a funny story. This is going to be funny because, it's one of those stories
Absolutely.
where, as a young kid, I wanted to impress my 3rd grade teacher.
You guys hear that out there? For all the young kids watching, you're not the first one. Bernie wanted to impress his teacher too.
Yeah. And so I remember I was like, sneaking into my dad's room, spraying some on before I went to the classroom. And so I went, and I remember, as like if it was yesterday, when I got my first compliment from my 3rd grade teacher, and she said, "Wow, you smell amazing." And ever since that time, just those words were ingrained in my memory. And so every time somebody tells me that I smell good, there's no better feeling than that, Chris.
Oh man,
it is
sure.
it is just incredible. It is just amazing. But I also say that my parents were very influential in my life, and they always smelled good. They always made it a purpose, to smell good. And that's how I got started. I just got used to being around 2 good smelling parents.
Of course.
And that just kind of rubs off on you.
Oh, for sure. And so, while you're, talking and thinking about your parents and the impact and how it started so young for you to love fragrances, what fragrance really, I want to say, made you fall in love with fragrances? Could we say it's the Givenchy, or was it another one?
Well, Givenchy was the fragrance that made me fall in love, and when I was in my infancy.
Yeah.
But then, years later, when I became a teenager, there was a fragrance called Cool Water. And yes, Cool Water was the fragrance that made me fall head over heels for fragrances. And so, and not only that, but again, my wife, who is my wife now, back then she was my girlfriend, she loved Cool Water.
Of course.
So guess what? I would just, take a shower in Cool Water. And, but I just really loved, the fragrance, in general. Cool Water to me, means my teenage years. There's just so many good memories using that fragrance. And, and so that's kind of that was like the second fragrance I came upon that really made me go on a scent journey.
Yeah.
And even till this day, I have a bottle of Cool Water at home, and every time I open it, I spray it. It takes me back to when I was a teenager.
Effect.
Yes. So, I have a special affinity for Cool Water in my heart. And so, so that fragrance was key, and as I was developing, in my teenage years.
Oh, that's amazing, man. And, now we heard about the infancy, we heard about the teenage years. One of the things that we're curious about is understanding and knowing, what really got you into creating content? Because it's one thing to love fragrances and it's one thing to want to smell good, but it's another thing to say, you know what, I want to share that passion with others. So what started it for you? You know, the content aspect of.
Yeah, so that's a great question, Chris. It really started after COVID.
Mm,
I started really watching, other content creators create content about fragrance. And I really, really started liking it. I started liking, people, review fragrances and talk about fragrances and how fragrances made them feel.
mm,
And so it almost became like an addiction to watching these
yeah.
content creators talk about fragrances. And quite honestly, back then, and after COVID, I didn't even know how to use Instagram. And so, but at the same time, I remember I was like, you know what, I could probably do this. There's got to be a way where I can, use this passion that I have for fragrances and also do what they're doing. And so I began just to, experiment with Instagram. And I remember, Chris, I had a bottle of, I think the fragrance was called, it was from Zara. It was a rich, warm, and addictive tobacco. And it's very, very sweet fragrance. And I remember, I took my phone out and I just began recording it, just waving it back and forth.
Yeah.
And then, I just uploaded the video and I started getting likes. I don't know who
Wow.
was liking the video, but just doing that alone was like, I was like, wow, well, what can I do next?
Yeah.
What can I do better? And so that's kind of like, how my journey as content creator started. Started with a Zara bottle, of tobacco, rich, warm, and addictive.
Wow, that's so crazy, to think about it. Just, the love of it and just something as simple as just going ahead and, creating just a little short reel or content from that. That's a lot. Now, you said you were watching a lot of different content creators. I'm sure it could have been on YouTube or different sources. So which content creators, maybe you could give us about maybe 2 or 3 that really stood out to you, that to you was like, yo, you know what? This person inspired me to also share my love of fragrances the way that they are.
Absolutely. So yeah, so there are so many content creators out there that I used to watch,
Mhm.
and I still watch them. But one of them that really stands out to me was, and he's been doing this for quite some time. It was, Mr. Cologne
Mhm, mhm,
76.
mhm.
He just caught my attention from the get go, just because, just the way he is, the way he speaks. He has this certain mannerisms about
Absolutely.
him. And he's just a true gentleman. So that kind of drew me to him. I also was, I'm a Spanish speaker, so I used
Mhm.
to watch a lot of Spanish speaker content creators.
Ah,
So there was another content creator who just made me laugh. He was just rough and tough, but his name was Perfu Adictos.
okay.
And so he came on a lot and he used to talk a lot about, Middle Eastern
Okay,
fragrances or just
okay.
all kinds of fragrances. And so I really liked his content because it was just, it was raw, but it was to the point. And what I loved about him was, these two guys
Mhm.
was their authenticity.
Yeah.
It came across. And when I watched them, it was fun. It was interesting and I connected with them,
Yeah.
if you will.
That's awesome, man. That's so incredible to hear how other content creators inspire you as a content creator.
Yes, yes.
And, each and every single day, we see it all the time. We're inspired all the time. And that's amazing. Now, as we speak about this journey of being a content creator, there's always going to be some ups, there's always going to be some downs.
Yes, yes.
What were some of the things that you find as a content creator the most rewarding for you?
Yeah, so most rewarding for me has to be the relationships I forged over
Mm,
this time.
yeah.
I think one of the most important things that I've been able to do is meet, people that have been able to help me in just a lot of areas of my life. And not only help me, but just establish, real friendships,
Mm,
across the board. And so to me, that has been the most rewarding, aspect of being a content creator. And so there's been so many good people I've met, from other content creators to people at perfume counters,
yeah.
people, in the street who see me, hey, you're Heavenly Central.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so when you have those connections, when you make those connections, it really feels wonderful because it's it just makes such an because you don't know the impact you're making
Yeah.
until you come across people.
Yeah. Very
And,
true.
and as a content creator, and I know that there's other content creators watching us. I encourage content creators not to only create content at home, but hit the streets, go to the events, because that's where you really, make those connections. And so, yeah, so to me, that's one of the most rewarding things of becoming a content creator.
Yeah, and with you saying that, it really gives you the opportunity for you to get your face out there and to see you outside of just Heavenly Central, but to get to know Bernie, the guy, the individual as well, which I
Yes.
think speaks volumes, and which what audiences really love is getting
Yes.
to know the person behind the camera. Now, we spoke about what's rewarding, but what are some of the hardships,
Yeah.
being a content creator? Because, we all know there's hardships, and we know that they're different for everyone. But, for you particularly, if what's been a hardship on this journey for you?
Yeah, I think a hardship when I first began was, I did not have the support,
Mm.
that I needed to create content. Like so for instance, and I'll explain. Sometimes people don't understand what you're
Ah,
doing.
yeah.
And so, as people don't understand what you're doing, you're talking about fragrances. And so sometimes we try to explain to people what you're trying to do. They just don't understand. And so there is a time of what I call it the buy-in
Yeah.
stage. And so, but once they get it, once they see what you're doing and they're like, wow, man, what you're doing is awesome. We get it. And so that to me is very important. You need to have a good support group
Hmm.
around what you do, because if you're doing this alone, it is very tough. So you need people not only to help you, with cameras, with equipment, but also people who encourage you too.
Yes.
Keep going. You're
Yes.
doing a wonderful job. You're, hey man, your work is impactful. And so a lot of messages that I received when I first began,
Hmm.
were of people that I would create just a really rough reel, or it's like, man, that reel sucked, and but they would say, oh man, that was awesome, that was
Yeah. Yeah.
amazing. And so those little voices were the ones that really kept me going. And I said, you know what, I can do better. I can do better.
Yeah.
And I can do better. So, but yeah, but a lot of challenges. And then another challenge too is, sometimes I have so many ideas,
Yeah.
and but I can only
Do so
employ
much.
one or two, and I'm like, oh my, I want to do this, I want to do that. And so I'm always writing ideas
Hmm.
down, just because if I can't get to it today, but maybe tomorrow or next week. So I go through a process where I'm just
Yeah.
thinking about ideas all the time.
Yeah. Now talking about ideas, just to stay there for a little bit, what goes into the creative process? Because for those who don't know, let me say this to you guys. If you ever want to see extravagant content creation, I'm talking about creativity to its to the max, you need to go ahead and check out Bernie's page. Because I mean, the amount of creativity that goes into it.
Yeah, yeah.
Talk to us about that process. The costumes we see sometimes and all that goes into that. What's that like for you?
Yeah, well, for me, it all starts with the fragrance.
Hmm.
So I pick up a fragrance bottle, or I'll see something at the store, or I'll see something that's popular, and I pick up the fragrance, I buy it, and I spend time with the fragrance. I smell the fragrance,
Hmm.
and sometimes it could be something in the fragrance that'll trigger something creative.
Wow.
And so it could be, for instance, something that'll remind me of El Zorro.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
so
yeah,
if
yeah.
a fragrance will remind me of El Zorro, guess what? We're going to do a Zorro reel. Or if a fragrance reminds me of Indiana Jones,
Yeah.
then you know what? This would be a good fragrance to create a Indiana Jones reel. But the creative process is insane, because I start with one thing, but then my mind just gets flooded with so
Yeah.
many ideas.
Wow.
And so we put this together, we put costumes together, we put, I write a script, everything's scripted,
Hmm.
and then we just, put everything together, and then we just go with it. But but that to me is so much fun. I mean, the creative process behind creating reels, behind fragrances, that to me is I could say that that's my forte.
Yeah.
That to me is it's just a very fun process. And if you haven't experienced that, then let me tell you something. As a content creator, once you find that thing that you really love,
Hmm.
man, it just keeps going, and you just want more of it. And so that's kind of how it starts with me.
Wow, that's incredible, to hear that, because, sometimes you can watch a video and you can tell, oh, you know what, I didn't put much effort into it, or the other person that you're watching the video of didn't put much effort into it. But with yours, there's always effort. You can always tell you go the extra mile all the time.
Yeah.
And, because of all the difficulties, the things that are challenging to, be as creative as you are and to make it actually, put together and give it to us as the audience. Now, I'm sure sometimes there might be some difficulties trying to remain consistent.
Yes.
And so how does that impact you, being inspired all the time and remaining consistent in the game?
Yeah. So I think, again, my passion for fragrances is what inspires me. And so I always try to stay a step ahead of the game, because I know that there's going to be, down moments,
Yeah.
which come, every content creator, faces, down times, and they come. And so I try to always, I'm always creating reels. I got a bank of reels already ready to go. And so I think, it's very important, because, you have an audience that wants to see you, that wants to hear from you. And so for me, those connections are very important. So I make it, a point to have things already lined up so that I can serve them up, to my people or to my followers. And, but it can be challenging sometimes, because I've been there. There's been times where I'm like, oh man, I don't feel like creating content today. I'm tired. I've had, and granted, we have a 9 to 5, we work, regular jobs, and then we do this. And so I think for content creators, who have regular jobs and also do content creation, my hat goes off to you guys, because it's not easy. It's not an easy thing to do. But to those that do it, you will be rewarded, because, I've been rewarded with just so many blessings. And but it's such a fun journey, and it's been a fun journey. But to keep inspired and consistent, you just have to, put your head down. And just keep going, and also have like a North Star, because there's always gonna be the critics and the negative voices. Don't listen to those people, because they're not gonna get you there. Just keep focused, laser focus on the target, and you'll get there eventually. So.
No, for sure. That's so important, remaining focused. And that's the name of the game, remaining focused, remaining current. But we're also seeing now as content creators, and you might see this as well, where, sometimes the algorithm may not be your best friend.
Yes.
And some of the things that you really put a lot of effort into may fall flat, may not get all the views, and, there's a lot of things going on within the fragrance community now, the oversaturation of a lot of other creators. How do you remain current? How do you say, you know what, I got to figure out new and creative ways to remain current? How do you do that?
Yeah. So the way I do it is, I watch everybody, and I look at everybody. Obviously, there's a standard that I live by, and I try to produce quality content. And so I'm never going to go under that, but we also have to evolve. And so if something's not working and I'm not getting the views that I want, then I'm like, what can I do to make a difference? And a lot of times is, it's checking, new fragrances out. Sometimes is, trying to, I'm like, let me change my camera equipment. Let me change the setup. Let me change the lighting. Let me change the outfits. Let me change the way I speak. Let me do different things. Let me do something funny. So I'm constantly, changing. You have, as a content creator, and I'll say this, you have to evolve. Don't stay, obviously, you stay true to yourself, but always try to, just to change here and there. Because things change, and if you're not changing, then you stay left behind.
Exactly,
and that's the thing that that people just need to be privy of.
Absolutely. And with someone with the extensive collection that you have, smelled hundreds, if not thousands of different fragrances, and you've owned numerous bottles and have been doing this for quite some time, since you said at a very young age.
Yes.
I'm sure by now there's some that you hold near and dear to your heart.
Yes.
Really quick, Bernie, can you give us maybe your top 3 fragrances of all time?
Oh man,
and why? I know it's it's hard, of all time, and why? Why do those stick to you?
All right, so I mean, I've already told you my fragrances when I was a kid, a teenager. Now I'm going to tell you about the man fragrances, the masculine ones.
Of course.
So I have an affinity for Parfums de Marly, Carlisle. That's a fragrance to me that, you know, I'm a marketer. I work in an office, and that fragrance to me projects, you know, masculinity. It projects power. It projects, I don't know, it just makes me feel really, really good.
Absolutely.
It makes me feel like the man, you know? So when I wear that one, it's, you know, it's just because of that, just because it just makes me feel, you know, it makes me feel good.
Of course.
And then another fragrance that I had that I really, really love, I mean, I'm a very big Aventus fan, but then, you know, Creed came out with Absolu Aventus, and it kind of put Aventus, you know, in the back. And so that one came forward. And so that's another fragrance that I really enjoy wearing. That one is another one that makes me feel, you know, makes me feel like a gentleman.
Yeah.
Makes me feel elegant, makes me feel good as a person. And so every time I wear that, you know, I wear that with a nice suit, or if I'm conducting a business meeting, put some of that on, and I'm like, it's game over, man. This deal is closed.
For sure.
And yeah, so I really, really enjoy that one. And then the last but not least is Elysium by Roja Dove. And that to me is just another nice, you know, fresher type, you know, scent profile that I can pretty much wear in this heat. You know?
We know.
And so Elysium to me also is one of those fragrances where, you know, I can wear, you know, with a nice white button up white shirt, you know, slacks. And and it just makes me feel awesome. And not only that, but man, it's a compliment machine.
Oh yeah.
It gets a lot of compliments. So
for sure.
Those three fragrances are my fragrances. If I was to pick my top three.
Now, you mentioned some incredible fragrances. We know how great they are. And you mentioned them from certain brands and certain niche houses that have certain quality behind their fragrances. And I guess one of the things that I want to know is, you know, with the way it is sometimes with, you know, you don't want to name drop too many niche houses because of certain things that can happen. You know, maybe it might be some houses don't like when other people, you know, tag them into their, you know, with their content. How do you pick and choose to stay safe with your content where, you know, you're not worried about it being, you know, taken down or anything like that?
Yeah. So my process with that is, you know, I try to pick brands that have been actively engaging with content creators. I try the ones that have, you know, built relationships with content creators like us, because, you know, and I know that there are certain houses that are really hard to work with. And so if you're not working with me, or if you don't show any interest, and you know, I mean, I'm pushing your bottles, I'm pushing your fragrances, and you don't even have the audacity to like my content or something I speak about, then I'm like, you know, okay, well, they really don't care about content creators. And so I kind of dial back a little bit, and then I just, you know, pick another fragrance to talk about. But that's kind of like, you know, I approach that, you know, because, you know, you got to be careful nowadays, you know, because a lot of times, you know, you get hit with, you know, if they don't like you as a content creator, you know, that you get reported, and then, you know, then you're in trouble, your account gets suspended. But you know, and I had that happen for 24 hours, which was a little scary. Yeah. I was like, man, what's going on? But I got it back.
Yeah. No, you know, it's amazing that you brought that up about, you know, brands willing to support content creators.
Yes.
And, you know, there are a lot of brands who are willing to support them. A lot of brands sometimes might send gifted objects, gifted bottles, or so on to a content creator. Now, how do you navigate which brands you choose to actually collaborate with? When a brand reaches out to you and says, hey, you know what, Bernie, we have a fragrance we want to send over to you. How do you navigate which brands, yes, you're going to work with, or which brands, no, you know what, we'll pass on. This isn't really my speed type of thing. Yeah.
So you know, so a lot of these brands, I mean, a lot of the brands that reach out to me, I mean, are good brands. Do I promote everything? I don't promote everything I get offered. But you know, but I try to give people the benefit of the doubt. You know, I try to, you know, build a relationship. And if I don't know the brand too well, you know, I make an effort to try to get to know them, get to know the brand ambassadors, and then when we reach a point where I'm like, you know what, I like and I investigate. Obviously, I investigate the houses, and if I feel like they are doing a good job, and and I see other fellow content creators creating content about their products, then I'll take and go ahead and create content for them. But yeah, I mean, it's like I said, there's certain houses that work with us. There are certain houses that really don't want to work with us. But at the end of the day, I think what really leads me is it's the fragrance,
of course,
and if the fragrance smells good, if the fragrance house is good collaborator with content creators, that to me are just two very important things.
Yeah, and we started out talking about the world of fragrances and what encouraged you or inspired you to get started. Now, we've mentioned briefly that there's a lot of, new content creators being, coming up on the scene.
Yeah.
And, there might be a young, fragrance lover who's been thinking about creating content, who's like, hey, I really want to start, but I don't know where to start. I don't know what to do. I don't have the equipment, either. What's some advice that you might give to that young individual? Or it might be somebody who's a little bit more seasoned, who just is afraid to get behind camera. What some advice would you give to them?
Yeah, so my advice would be, and you mentioned this last week, just start, and you'll figure it out, because that's how it was with me. Listen, I didn't even know how to use Instagram when I first started. Didn't even know how to use TikTok. But guess what? Now I'm an expert in those things, because the more you do it, the better you get to it. But yeah, it's one of those things. I think if you love fragrances, and you feel a passion for fragrances, then yeah, do it, and you don't have to be, and I think one of the most important things, and let me just rewind a little bit, is, if you are, you mentioned authenticity, but also if you have a gift, I saw the other day a guy that picked up a bottle and started singing, and I've been watching this guy, and every time, he comes on my feed, he sings, and it's a gift that he has, and I'm like, man, that's beautiful. I can't sing, but you have to do something. If you can do something that nobody else can do, that's going to make you a good content creator, because, you can't replicate certain things.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things that, you can't replicate. So, I'm not going to pick up a bottle and start singing. The guy picked up the bottle and he started singing a Disney song. And I was like, man, that's pretty interesting. It's kind of out there. When I was watching, I was like, man, but I liked it. I liked the content. I like what he does.
Of course.
And so, but yeah. And so in my case, I love Hollywood. I love films. I love to create. I love characters.
Yeah.
So I take all those little things and I create. I paint. That's my paintbrush and canvas. So find what you like. If you can find that thing that you like doing that nobody else can do, because a lot of these things are God-given talent, then go with that. And I'm going to tell you right now, you will be successful.
Yeah. And just one more question, Bernie, before we go ahead and we start wrapping up.
Yeah.
This is a question that I'm curious to know about, and I'm sure the audience is as well. We're talking about the way in which we stay current. We spoke about the way in which we remain motivated. One of the things that I want to ask is, what are some of your thoughts about some of the content that's being pushed out that you may not, view so much as quality content? What are your thoughts on some of what's being pushed out by some content creators right now that may not, be viewed like, oh, okay, that looked like it was kind of like, just a last second thing,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in my case, like I always say, the more, the merrier. I like to watch everybody's I try to watch everyone's stuff. But there's, there is what I consider, good quality content. And then there is, subpar content. And so, it really is, up to the person watching. We create content for the people.
Yeah.
We create content for the followers. And so whenever, I'm watching content, of somebody else's, if there's something, again, and I give people a chance. Obviously, I give people a chance. Sometimes I'm like looking at stuff. I'm like, okay, I wouldn't do that, or I wouldn't say that. But, and I watch it, a couple of times. But if the content doesn't come across, genuine, if the
mhm.
content doesn't have quality, or, or if they're misleading people, that's where I draw the line.
Yeah.
Because I know some content creators, and I've seen content creators, pick up a bottle, a dupe or something like this, say, oh, this is better than the original.
Yeah.
And so, a lot of times I've seen people do that don't have the original fragrance. And that to me is like, you shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah.
And so that sort of stuff is where I draw the line. So to me, the most important is, if you come across authentic, that to me is you've won me over.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
that's incredible, Bernie, man. And we thank you for, taking your time to speak with us, helping us to better understand you, the creator, you, the fragrance lover, you, the fragrance collector, and also most importantly, you, the man. Now, as we go ahead and we wrap up, I know I said one more question, one last question. One last one is,
Yes.
What role does your family play
Yeah.
in having you have the success that you've had now as a content creator?
Yeah, great question, Chris. And thank you for asking that, because my family plays the biggest role in content creation, because without their support, I would not be able to do what I do. And so, having that circle, that tight knit, I have my daughters, my wife, they are my helpers. They are my assistants.
Of course.
And they come with me to events. They try out fragrances with me. They're there when nobody else is watching. They're watching everything I do. And so they are actually my biggest fans.
Wow.
They'll tell me at home, Dad, I love this. Dad, I love, what that video that you made. They hit like on my post.
Yeah.
They hit like on my stories. And and anything I do, you see that, your family's bought in.
Of course.
Man, that is the greatest gift that any content creator could ever have, is having a family that can really, really support you, especially when you're feeling uninspired.
Oh, for
and
sure.
so, yeah, but yeah, they play probably the biggest role, outside of my following. My family is probably key to me doing this every single day.
Yeah, absolutely. And, to the families of content creators that's out there, trust me, we appreciate you guys. The things that we are able to do, we would not be able to if it was not for you.
Yeah.
Well, Bernie, thank you so much for helping us know a little bit more about yourself. Now we're going to jump into, what is typically, my favorite segment of the show.
Yes.
But I'm sure you're a little excited for this one today.
I am.
For the Scent Trail Spotlight today, guys, we have none other than Lucius by Fragrance Du Bois.
Yes.
Now, for those who don't know, that just recently came out last year, but it's very difficult to get your hands on here in the States.
Yeah.
And so we have a bottle here.
Yes.
And we are going to go ahead. We're going to get our noses on there because it's now being released out here in the States. And we want to tell the people, is it worth the hype?
Yeah.
Is this something they should jump into? So we're going to go ahead and we're going to spray Lucius. You could go ahead and do us the honors. We have our tester strips here.
Awesome.
And we have this beautiful black and gold bottle.
Beautiful.
Wow.
Beautiful bottle.
And we're going to go ahead. We're going to get our noses on there and we're going to let you guys know our thoughts on Lucius by Fragrance Du Bois. Oof.
Wow. It's already hit it. Wow, that smell. Oof.
Now in Lucius, you're supposed to have in the opening some citruses, some pink pepper as well. And there's supposed to be some wood, some orange blossom, amber, and some tonka in the base.
Man, that smells amazing. There's almost like does this have pepper? Like a peppery?
Yeah.
It's like something spicy.
In the opening. Yeah. It opens with that nice, spicy, but not abrasive or in your face.
No.
It's very soft and gentle.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Yeah, it's very fresh, like a fresh opening, almost like not super bright or fresh, but it's just like there's like a softness to it.
Yeah.
But there's this spiciness note in there. Yeah, this is beautiful.
Oh my. Oh
man,
my.
this is beautiful. Beautiful fragrance.
Now, where would you think of wearing a fragrance like Lucius? What events do you see?
Well, if you're a guy, definitely want to wear this on a date, because that right there is it has like a like an alluring thing about it. Like it just kind of draws you in.
Yeah. And you know, one of the things that I do really appreciate about Lucius is, yes, it opens up with that citrus, fresh, you know, pink pepper there as well. But then as it gets down into the mid, they introduce this beautiful note of cedar wood. And to counter that and balance it out, there's this beautiful orange blossom note. And then in the dry down, you get that amber that just adds slight resonance, that slight seductive nature to it. And a little bit of like a creamy sweetness from the tonka. Nothing too overwhelming, but something that's just perfect. Man.
You know, something that just jumped out at me too is this is very versatile.
Very.
You can wear this summer and you can wear this in the winter time. This is, I mean, it's one of those fragrances that you can really use any time of the year. Man, this is really, really exquisite. Yeah. Very nice.
Yes.
Wow.
Oh, my goodness.
Who has this? Because I've been trying to look for it. Nobody has it.
So right now, it's very, very difficult to get your hands on. But there is a guy who works very well with me. And, you know, I tell you about him all the time. Bluegrass Fragrance Co. They have this full testers, not the bottles, but, you know, the samples, 7.5 ml samples that you could get from Fragrance du Bois. Nice, beautiful fragrance. Test it out. Check it out. You guys will not regret this at all. This by far, Burn, I got to be honest with you, has jumped up to one of my most addictive fragrances that I want to run and get.
I don't blame you.
Yeah.
I don't blame you. It's that good.
Yeah, it is superb. Now, guys, if you haven't gotten your nose into it, please figure something out. Travel, go to a mall that has it somewhere, because you need to get your nose on Lucius.
Yes,
because it's that good.
Really, really good. Excellent fragrance, and one that I'm definitely going to add to the collection.
Oh yeah, it's a must for sure. It's a must, especially now with, you know, how we enjoy dressing up and how we like to, you know, present ourselves. This is perfect for that.
Oh yeah. It's absolutely perfect. I mean, even if you're getting married, I mean, this is one of those that you would wear on that very important day. Man, that is one of those fragrances that, you know, you don't want to mess around with.
No, absolutely. Any final thoughts on Lucius before we wrap on up?
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, it's a 10-10, man. 10-10. You know, fragrance is on point. Presentation is on point.
Yeah.
And their whole marketing has been on point. So this is one fragrance that I'm definitely it's a serious contender. Probably best fragrance of the year, man. This is really, really nice.
It is, and I agree with you 100%, man.
Yeah.
I can't get enough of this. Now you can't get enough of this. When I spray it, my wife can't get enough of it. So, you know, I'm telling you, man, you won't be able to get enough of this at all. You know, and so that's gonna be it for us today. So we thank you so much for stepping into the world of scent with us at the Scent Trail Podcast. And if you enjoyed this episode, do us a favor. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell notification, and make sure you share this with another fragrance lover. And not simply that, if yourself have a scent story, or maybe you might have a burning fragrance question, please feel free to go ahead and dive into our DMs, hit the comment section, and let us know, because we would love to feature your voice in one of our future episodes. As for me here with Heavenly Scent Trail, we are excited that you were able to join us today. Bernie, are you excited for next time?
I'm very excited, man. We have an awesome show coming up. So, man, stay locked in. Keep watching, because it's going to get good.
As always, for us over here at the Scent Trail Podcast, it was a pleasure to have you guys with us. And until next time, enjoy.
Ambassador for a very famous